Eala has never won a Grand Slam title. She has never been world number 1. She has never even cracked the top 20. And yet, this month, she did something no trophy could do. She stopped a country in its tracks with a single photograph. No match. No scoreboard. No opponent across the net. Just one magazine cover, and within hours, Filipino fans were reacting like she had won the whole tournament. Comment sections filled up faster than after some of her actual wins. Group chats lit up. People who had never watched a full tennis match in their lives were suddenly sharing a photo of a 21-year-old in a satin gown like it was a national headline. Stay with me, because the reason for that reaction is not what you think. Picture her backstage at Palacio de Memoria, a heritage mansion in Manila turned photography studio for the day. Someone hands her a mirror. She does not fuss with her hair. She just looks, steady, unbothered. The same look she gives an umpire after a bad line call that she has already decided not to argue. Then, minutes later, standing in front of 16 different tables at a state dinner, she is asked how long she has ever spent signing autographs after a brutal loss. She does not name a number. She says something simpler. Her fans traveled hours to be there, so she will stay as long as it takes. No handler cuts her off. No assistant checks a watch. That is the whole person, revealed in one unscripted answer. Now picture the room around her. Malacanang Palace. Crystal glasses catching low-light, quiet music. The president of the Philippines joking to the room that the entire state dinner was really just an excuse for a photo with a 21-year-old tennis player. Laughter fills the room, but underneath it is something else. Recognition. The kind usually reserved for people who have stopped being called promising and started being treated as proof. Because here is what makes this moment strange when you actually sit with it. Eala built her name through motion. Quick feet, resets after unforced errors, the relentless urgency of chasing down a ball she is not even sure she will reach in time. On a tennis court, stillness is never an option. Every second belongs to the next decision. And now, for the first time, an entire country was looking at her completely still, frozen in a single frame. And somehow that stillness felt louder than any match she had ever played. It was not a costume change. It was a status change, and everyone watching seemed to understand that instinctively, even if they could not explain why. This is where the story really starts. 2 years ago, Eala was a name tennis insiders whispered about. A junior champion. A future worth watching. A maybe. Nobody builds a national cover story around a maybe. But rankings do not lie, and hers had quietly stopped being theoretical. She climbed into the world's top 30, reportedly sitting at number 29 on the official Duta list, a number that rewrote every sentence that had ever been written about her. Journalists who once described her as a promising talent now had to describe her as a proven one. Then came Wimbledon. She fought her way into the third week, becoming, by most accounts, the first Filipino player in history to reach that deep into a Grand Slam singles draw. Not a wild-card run propped up by a soft bracket. Not one lucky afternoon. Match after match, surface after surface, she kept answering the same question the same way. Yes, I belong here. That is the peak. That is the moment right before everything changed. And then it ended, the way almost every Grand Slam run eventually does. She lost. The tournament moved on without her. No fairy tale finish, no trophy lift, just a flight home earlier than she wanted. Earlier than an entire country had allowed itself to hope for. Here is the part that actually matters. It was not a collapse. She was not outclassed. She was beaten by someone slightly sharper on that particular day. In that particular round, the kind of loss that happens to players who have already arrived, not players still trying to prove they belong in the draw at all. There was no excuse to make, because none was needed. The scoreline told the truth, and the truth was that she had played well enough to lose narrowly to someone better on the day, not to be swept aside. She sat with that loss quietly. No headline about a meltdown. No public unraveling. No dramatic press conference. No viral moment of frustration. Just distance, silence, and then a plane home. For a player still building her name, That kind of quiet can feel almost unbearable, because there is no immediate reward for handling defeat with grace. Nobody claps for composure in a losing locker room. That should have been the end of the story for a while. A deep run, a respectable exit, back to the grind of smaller tournaments and long practice hours nobody films. Instead, something unexpected happened. The loss did not shrink her. It confirmed her. Because a fluke result gets forgotten within a week. A legitimate run to the third week of Wimbledon, followed by a clean, respectable exit against a tougher opponent, tells a completely different story. It tells you the run was not an accident. It tells sponsors, tournament organizers, and a watching nation that this was not a spike on a graph that would flatten out by next season. It was a new baseline. And that is precisely why, weeks later, a magazine could put her on a homecoming cover and have it feel earned instead of premature. The public was no longer being asked to believe in a possibility. They were finally being shown a result they had already watched happen with their own eyes. This is bigger than tennis. It always was, because somewhere in Cebu, in Quezon City, in a barangay with one cracked concrete court and no coach in sight, a kid is watching this unfold and quietly recalculating what is possible for their own life. Not because of one photo shoot, because of what that photo represents. That a Filipina, coming from outside the traditional tennis powers, without the deep academies or decades of infrastructure that usually produce top 30 players, can still get there. Every country has felt this particular feeling before. In some sport, at some point in its history, the disbelief that slowly turns into belief. The specific hunger of being underestimated for years and then finally forcing the rest of the world to recheck its assumptions. That feeling does not need translation. It does not need tennis knowledge to land. It simply travels from a tennis court in London to a living room in Davao, carried entirely by what the moment represents rather than what it technically means. But nobody should mistake a magazine cover for a finish line. She is 21 years old. 21-year-olds who reach the top 30 do not get to rest there. They get harder matches, not easier ones. Opponents now have film on her, hours of it, and coaching staffs across the tour have started building scouting reports with her name at the top. They know her patterns on the backhand side. They know how she tends to serve under pressure at deuce. They know exactly where to test her physically once a rally stretches past 6 or 7 shots, when fatigue starts to creep into footwork before it shows up anywhere else. The surprise factor, the thing that let her sneak up on bigger names for the last 2 seasons, is gone for good. It does not come back. What replaces it is less romantic and far more technical, tightening the second serve so it stops being a target, closing out service games more efficiently when the score gets tight instead of letting nerves creep in, learning to manage a calendar that will only grow more physically demanding as the ranking climbs and the invitations to bigger tournaments start arriving. Consistency is a completely different skill from breakthrough. She is only just beginning to find out how different. And there is a cost to all of this that nobody mentions at a state dinner. Once a country invests this much emotion into one athlete, ordinary weeks stop being ordinary. A first-round loss at some mid-tier tournament will get read online as a crisis. A good week will get read as the beginning of an inevitable dynasty. Neither reaction will be accurate, and both will arrive anyway, because that is simply what happens once a person becomes a symbol instead of just a competitor. She should not have to carry the weight of an entire nation's tennis ambitions every single time she steps onto a court. In every city, every week of the year. The fans who love her best, the ones who actually understand the sport and not just the headline, are the ones who already know that. They are the ones cheering just as loudly for the process as for the outcome. She is not Serena Williams. She is not Naomi Osaka. She is not Coco Gauff. Comparing achievements this early in her career would be unfair to her and frankly dishonest to them, given everything those players have already built over the course of decades combined. But the underlying mechanism is the same one that powered each of their crossover moments into something bigger than sport. Performance opens the door. It is what earns the right to even be discussed outside the sports pages. Personality is what makes people stay once that door is open. The thing that turns a fan following a ranking into a fan following a person. And representation is what gives an entire audience a genuine personal stake in a match they are not even playing in themselves, watching from thousands of miles away as if the outcome belongs to them too. Eala is standing at the very beginning of that intersection. Not the middle of it. Not anywhere near the end of it. The very beginning. So what does the next chapter actually look like, stripped of all the sentiment? Not another magazine cover, and not another viral moment at a state dinner. A deeper run at the US Open, tested against a completely different surface and a completely different set of expectations. A full season spent defending a top 30 ranking rather than chasing one, proving that the number was not a one-tournament accident that regresses the moment the spotlight moves elsewhere. A serve that can hold up against players ranked inside the top 10, not just the collection of mid-pack opponents she has been beating so far. These are not vague hopes thrown out for the sake of optimism. These are the specific, unglamorous, entirely measurable benchmarks that separate one great breakthrough season from an actual career that lasts a decade. Because here is the truth that nobody put on the cover of that magazine. That photograph did not make her important. It simply caught up, finally, to something that had already happened weeks and months earlier, long before any camera was ever pointed in her direction. The stillness captured in that image was not new, and it was not manufactured for the shoot. It was the exact same discipline she has carried through every three-set battle on tour. The same control she has needed to stay composed at match point down in front of a hostile crowd. It had simply never been photographed before. This time it finally was. She was never waiting to be discovered. She just finally stopped being overlooked. So tell me in the comments, honestly, where were you the first time you heard the name Eala? Before Wimbledon? Before the magazine cover went viral across every timeline in the Philippines? Or right now, hearing her name properly for the very first time? In this video. In a few years when everyone knows this name, you will want a record of when you knew first.